Good afternoon. My name is Chris Gruey. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect for the Ohio School Boards Association, and this is Preparing Your Database for the World Integration Tips and Tricks. Before I get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I started with OSBA in 2013 as a part-time contractor. I've been full-time with the organization since the end of 2015. My primary work on a day-to-day basis is with the FileMaker platform and Drupal, integrating the two, having a lot of fun with those things. And this is actually my second DEF CON presentation. I was lucky enough to present last year as well. Outside of work, I'm a graduate of The Ohio State University. That's where I met my amazing wife, Stephanie. Been married for 7 years. Currently have 2 small children at home, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And we're very excited to have a third one coming this February. So very excited about the rest of this year and next year. Thank you. So a little bit about what I do. I work for OSBA, which is a nonprofit school board trade association. We work with school boards across the state of Ohio. We have more than 700 member districts and roughly 3,500 members who are directly a part of the association, and then associated school district support staff that also receive services from us. Over the last 30 years, we've used the FileMaker platform as the core of our applications. So we've been using FileMaker for a lot longer than I've been there. And over the last 6 years, we've started to make extensive use of Drupal as a scalable web front end. And I'll show you some examples of that here in a minute. So between the two applications, this really gives us the opportunity to use the right platform for the right audience and build the right user experience for that user. So let me tell you about one of our applications, our exhibitor's dashboard. Now, I spent the last couple weeks trying to sum up this application in just a few words, and really the only way to show it to you is some video, which I'll show you here in just a moment. Just a quick overview of what the application does and the problem it was trying to solve. Every year at our annual conference in Columbus, we have a trade show that has roughly 600 booths. So as you can imagine, that generates a lot of data and a lot of things that we need to keep track of. So about 4 years ago, we started building a website in Drupal that would allow us to better track this, that we directly integrated with FileMaker, and I'll show you both sides of this now. So the first one here, there it goes. This is what our exhibitors see when they log in. So we've got all the company information, all of their invoices, any booths they've purchased. This is an invoice that we've generated in FileMaker that we then display through a container on the web. And then we have probably the coolest thing I've ever built, this reservation system. This is a live SVG map that allows them to click into a booth, see data about that booth, who has it, what size of booth it is, how much it costs. And then if it's available, they can add it to their cart right there. There's a checkout process this video doesn't show because it's kind of boring. But they're able to check out right there online, pay for the booth, and move on with their reservation. So back on the portal, there's some additional information that they can click into and edit. We actually produce a guide every year that shows a lot of information about every one of our exhibitors, and they're able to actually edit this here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all throughout the year. So if the company's website changes or the address changes, they can pop right in here, edit it, and our staff don't have to go out and collect that data. Our exhibitors are able to tell us about it right here on the web. And then all of this flows back into FileMaker, which I will show that side next. So this is our trade show dashboard, which is really the coolest layout I've ever worked on. We've got this giant web viewer in the middle of the screen here that shows the same map that we were showing off on the exhibitors app. In fact, it's generated by the app. And our trade show manager is able to click in there, see all the information that our exhibitors see, also see a total booth count, total revenue, basically everything she needs to know about the show at a glance. And then if we go into a company record here, we can see the same data we were editing online, all of the invoices or orders for that company. This is my test company, so it has a lot of orders. And then we're also able to see the same map yet again. We're using the same parts to create a different user experience. In this case, our trade show manager is able to add a company to a booth, pops in right there in their reserved booths, and we're all set. So that's kind of what this app does. Let me tell you about how we actually put this together. So when we're building these types of web experiences, the very first thing we do is we split up our layouts. We have our UI layouts in FileMaker that are for our internal users, much like the trade show dashboard I just showed you. And then we have web layouts that are for use by the web application exclusively. I'll tell you a little bit more about why we separate those in just a minute. We also try to keep things simple. We send only what we need out to the outside world, so we limit the data flow. And we also name our fields consistently according to standards, and that's very key when you're dealing with a web application specifically. So why do we use web layouts? Well, the number one reason is reliability. As long as our field names don't change, and by convention, we don't ever change our field names, Those layouts are very stable, and that means the application has a very stable layout to build on top of. It's not going to be looking for fields that aren't there anymore, and more importantly, we're not going to just randomly change the name of a field so it can change a label. It makes it very stable, very easy to build around. It also limits our traffic because the record, as it's moving through the data API, is just slimmed down to what exactly the web application needs. So that keeps our data API usage down to a minimal amount and keeps the application working. We also try to name things very consistently. So whether you're using camel case, snake case, Pascal case, it really doesn't matter. You really want to make sure when you're building a web application, especially, that you have a consistent naming scheme so that when you're looking at the managed database dialog box at 2 o'clock in the morning because you're troubleshooting your application, I've done this before, you're not going to run into any issues because all the field names are different formats and you've got all sorts of random things to deal with that aren't going to help you get the job done. It also makes it much easier on the next guy or gal that has to come in and work on your application as well. I personally have inherited some applications that have table structures going back 30 years, and from those that have had 6 or 7 different primary developers, you see all sorts of different things. And one of the problems we've run into is where there are punctuation in field names like periods and all sorts of random question marks and exclamation points. We actually had a situation pop up during the build of the first exhibitors app where a period in a field name caused us to lose a couple of hours of development time because we were trying to troubleshoot an error. It turns out the XML in the custom web publishing engine didn't like that period, so when I took the period out, magically the field worked as we expected. So those are the types of things you can run into with these things. Be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about JSON today, and as you've just heard in Vivian's presentation and probably a few other times over the last 2 years, it's a big part of the FileMaker platform. And there are 2 specific things I want to touch on as far as integrations go that can really help you out as a developer. Number one, if you use JSON as a default script parameter language and also for your script results, you can build tests around those, meaning you can write a test that sends in some JSON to a script and gets some JSON out and make sure the output is what you expect. Now, as your custom app begins to grow and you have more scripts that call other scripts that call even more scripts, you can run into some issues where a change a couple scripts down the call chain might impact your original script, and these tests can really help you troubleshoot those cases and find out exactly where the error came from. The other cool thing about JSON, especially in scripting, is when you're writing scripts this way where you have JSON going in, JSON coming out, you can almost treat those like a custom API within your application because you can send requests over the data API or over custom web publishing that run directly through those same scripts that you run in FileMaker, get the same exact results out, and if you're using any kind of a web language, it's going to have some kind of a JSON encoder and decoder in it, so your other application can also understand the same language. I bring this up because we've actually used this to great effect in the exhibitors app I just showed you. Once you complete that checkout process, there's about a half a dozen records that need to be created. And to do that would have taken several calls to the API. We found a way to pass some created JSON from the PHP application through our internal script transaction engine and then send back results to the web that was able to cut a lot of time off the execution for that particular process. So it's something that can really help you in the real world as you're building out your APIs and is a really cool feature that is just kind of there in FileMaker. So the last thing I want to talk about a little bit is performance. Now, in the session materials for today, there's supposed to be a demo file and a test app. The demo file is based on the Contact Starter app. It has about 1,000 records, and the test app's written in PHP. Unfortunately, those are not in the session materials for today, but I do have a GitHub link that has those. So you'll be able to download these and play with these yourself as well. The whole point of the test was to create several different layouts with minor variations to see how those things might affect performance. And I've got some results here. And I can tell you I've run these tests literally hundreds of times, and the order has been exactly the same every time. So here are the results of these tests. So anything that went through a web layout was just a little bit faster than, say, just running through one of our UI layouts based on the original contact details layout in that Contact Starter app. What I also found was if you filtered the portals on those records, those results came back just a little bit faster as well. Now down at the bottom, you'll see a lot of unstored calculations. Now let's think about this for a second. Why would unstored calculations slow things down? It's because while the data API is returning all of those records, it has to look up those unstored calculations, perform the calculation, which may entail going out and grabbing some other records, which is going to slow down your process considerably. And typically, I recommend, where it's possible, refactoring these types of fields into auto-entered text fields so that you're only calculating that once when the data is inserted into the table. Now, I know that's not going to work in all cases, and there are some caveats with that, but that can help you in cases where you're loading a large sum of records to be displayed somewhere else on the web, or even within FileMaker. So that's pretty much it for the main stuff here. So conclusions. Just remember that structure matters. If something's not going to perform in FileMaker Pro Advanced, sending it over the data API or custom web publishing is not going to help. It's still not going to perform. Use consistent layouts for more reliability. Change your labels, not your field names. That's just going to help you as a developer and help your app build some more reliability. And also remember that you can write some stuff once in a FileMaker script and run it from anywhere on the web, and that you can use JSON for script parameters and reusability. Now, I do have one additional thing that wasn't in the PDF for today's slides, and that is this GitHub link, which will have, it actually does have the session materials for today, the test app, the test files. And also over the next couple of months, as my solutions engineer Ryan and I are starting to redevelop our platform into its third generation, we're going to try and share some of the code samples that we're working on to help the community as well. So stay tuned to that link, and hopefully there'll be some more projects coming up there soon. With that, this session will have updates, and it is that GitHub link. And don't forget your session evaluations. Not sure where that went. But thank you very much for your time today, and if you have any questions, I'll take them now. Okay. Any questions?